Solo Leveling, Ragnarok. By Dang Du. Chapter 71. Suho, Miho, and Taijayu successfully entered the beehive, having narrowly avoided the rain of arrows. The two younger hunters shot forward immediately upon landing with tremendous speed. They swiftly severed the throats of the archers responsible for the arrows. Contaminated Ghoul has been defeated. Contaminated Ghoul has been defeated. They resembled the mutants on the ground. Damn it. They're all my hunters. Taijayu recognized their faces and gritted his teeth. Despite their mutation, traces of their past appearances lingered. They were the members of the Fiend Guild? Miho asked with a serious expression. No wonder Li Minsung was killing the other hunters but kidnapping the Fiend Guild hunters. Do you think he wanted to be the guild master this badly? I'm afraid we don't have time for questions. We're inside the beehive, so let's look for the owner. Baru, show us the way, Suho said. Yes, young monarch. Please follow me. The makeshift navigator, or rather barrigation, led the way with a quick flick of his antennae. At that moment, one of Suho's swords, Rakan's Fong, spoke to its master. Be cautious. This beehive has turned into a sanctuary. This place is a sanctuary? Suho asked, glancing at Rakan's Fong. Rakan shrugs his shoulders, denying any involvement. If that's the case, this must be Quaracia's sanctuary. I believe so. Do sanctuaries usually just pop up anywhere like this? Of course not. Sanctuaries are the resting places of monarchs. Since all the monarchs died, sanctuaries have become places for rituals dedicated to them. Suho recalled Rakan's sanctuary, which he had explored before. That means that there might be a relic inside this place. That remains to be seen. Whether there's a relic, a successor, or perhaps even a shaman, is unknown. Well, I guess we'll find out when we meet Li Minsung. What appeared to be a beehive was a completely new space once they were inside. The polarity between the interior and the exterior was extreme. The inside of the structure felt like a different dimension as an ominous sky loomed overhead with thick clouds. It looked as though a massive storm was about to be unleashed. The air inside was frozen with dread, and a sinister smell of decaying corpses permeated the atmosphere. It feels like we entered a gate. Perhaps a new dungeon has emerged? Taijayu asked as he glanced around. Suho replied, I believe this place is different from a dungeon. To be precise, we're in a sanctuary. His words made Taijayu uneasy. This is different from a dungeon? How do you know for sure? Taijayu, who was still suppressing the rapidly rising toxicity of the royal jelly with his mana, was completely on edge. The pressure of assuming accountability for the disaster as the guild master of the Fiend Guild also weighed heavily on him. The public had already turned their backs on them, and he wasn't sure how he'd resolve the situation at hand. The scope of Minsung's actions was unknown, but the fact that the Fiend Guild's former vice guild master had opened a dungeon in the heart of the city was undoubtedly a massive blow to their reputation. Not to mention the enormous compensation that would need to be paid to the victims of the disaster. Regardless, Suho's statement stumped Taijayu. The young hunter's mana was at a C-rank level, so the validity of his words was questionable, seeing he was an S-rank hunter with far more experience. If this isn't a dungeon, then what is it? Miho urgently intervened between the two. We don't have time to argue like this. Guildmaster Lim, are you currently unable to use mana? Taijayu winced as if he had been struck. That's correct. A poison is spreading through my body, and I'm suppressing it with mana. Did you not receive any healing? Miho asked. Healing didn't have any effect on this poison. It looks like I'll need a higher-ranked healer, but there's none nearby right now. Then why did you come along? Even if I can't use mana, my physical strength alone will be enough. The exceptional physical abilities of an S-rank hunter meant they were capable of unleashing tremendous power even without mana. Ah, you can act as a shield. That's great news. Taijayu was stumped by Miho's suggestion. Stop it. You're going to make the kid cry. Baru jumped in to defend him, looking at Taijayu with genuine pity. Did that thing just call me a kid? Taijayu was momentarily overcome with rage. But for some reason, as he locked eyes with the ant, an instinctive aversion washed over him. Am I feeling fear right now? Seems you've aged quite a bit over the years, Baru said, speaking to him as if he knew him. Taijayu felt an odd sensation, but it quickly dissipated. Everyone, prepare for battle, Suho said as he gazed at the sky, scanning the surroundings with his heightened senses. Up above, a swarm of dark bees was gathering. This is crazy. You're telling me that the clouds were actually a giant swarm of bees? Taijayu said, flabbergasted. This really is a beehive. Look at all the bees. Baru twitched his antennae. I'm sensing a strong energy coming from those clouds. It looks like we have to take to the skies again, Suho said. After breaking through a rain of arrows, they found themselves confronted with an immense swarm of bees that they had to soar through. Sanctuary of Insects has been activated. At that moment, Suho suddenly felt a chill down his spine. The feeling was reminiscent of the time he entered the Sanctuary of Beasts. Passive skill, unknown, has been acquired. In an instant, Suho's shadow spread in all directions, engulfing the entire beehive. And then, time stopped. Everything had come to a complete halt. I'm here again? Suho stood alone at the edge of the empty horizon, a world of perfect emptiness. This sure looks like the place of eternal rest. However, its atmosphere was entirely different from the resting place of Rakan, the monarch of fangs. Are these insects? Suho glanced down at the ground. On second look, the entirely white world was a swarm of white insects. At the edge of the empty horizon, a woman sat with crossed legs, arrogantly looking down at him. In an instant, Suho realized her true identity. Are you Koracia? The corners of the woman's mouth curled up wickedly. Yes, that's correct. My name is Koracia. To be more precise, I'm the spirit of the soul your father killed. At that moment, the system urgently displayed a message. Koracia is watching you. As soon as Suho read the message, the woman's presence began to expand enormously. Not only was her freighting aura increasing, but the white insects that formed the dimension began to converge into her, making her a colossal being. A long time ago, Koracia said, savoring the sight of Suho, who was significantly smaller than her now. I wanted to eat another monarch. I was curious about the taste. The queen of insects formed a sardonic smile. But in the end, it was I who was consumed. The ground beneath Suho's feet transformed into a colossal hand and grabbed his body. The hand lifted Suho to Koracia's face. She slowly scanned him, reminiscing her past. Did you know that your father was more venomous than any insects I've ever encountered? She pierced into his eyes as if she were looking for Sung Jinwoo's shadow, the man who had killed her. You remind me of him quite a lot. Really? People say I resemble my mother more, Suho quipped. A mischievous glint flickered in Koracia's eyes. What would happen if I eat you right now? Like father, like son, perhaps? Her face reminded Suho of a child about to squash a small insect, but he remained composed. For a spirit that's been dead for a long time, you sure talk a lot, huh? I see you've inherited your father's arrogance. Koracia cast a sinister gaze at Suho and lowered his body to the ground. But you are correct. I am already dead. However, at that moment, an ominous system message appeared in front of Suho. A quest has arrived. Before Suho could check the rest of the message, Koracia's cruel smile gleamed ruthlessly. I am both a single entity and a collective existence. Starting as a humble insect, Koracia had toiled to become the queen of insects, having consumed countless insects and undergoing remarkable growth. Every insect she had consumed was now a part of her body, and the insects that made this world were essentially the remains of Koracia's body and soul. From the moment you set foot in my world, I effectively swallowed you up. The ominous air of danger he felt from the beehive immediately filled the white world. He could feel that the entire dimension was becoming more hostile toward him. A quest window unfolded in front of Suho. Emergency quest, Koracia's poison. The queen of insects and the monarch of plagues, Quaratia, has drawn you into her poison. The insects that form Quaratia and her world now see you as their enemy. Survive for the required time to prove your worth. Required time, 4 hours. Remaining time, 4 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds. From her elevated position, a haughty smile graced Quaratia's lips as she looked down at Suho. It's time for you to struggle like us insects. Just as I did before your father. Every insect comprising this world began swarming aggressively towards Suho, but he remained utterly unmoved. Quaratia sensed that something was amiss. After all, Suho couldn't summon his shadow soldiers in her domain. Wait, she said, looking more bewildered. What in the world is that power? Could it be? A dark energy was swirling ominously around Suho's arm. Not only that, but a mystical wind was blowing over him as his hair began to turn silver. Quaratia, well acquainted with the source of the two energies, was unable to conceal her astonishment. You. Just how many powers have you inherited? Chapter 72. When monarchs died, they were sent to their eternal resting place. The empty dimensions of deceased monarchs were a realm of nothingness, a place where only their souls could exist. But Suho, who had been mysteriously summoned to such a world, had numerous options that he could utilize, the first being his skills. Skill, Iron Body Technique, has activated. A dark energy enshrouded Suho's arm. Quaratia immediately recognized the essence of his power and was astonished. Unbelievable. Is that the power of the monarch of the Iron Body? Amit, the mentor who had transformed a feeble and insignificant goblin into the Iron Body monarch, was rising out of Suho's body, revealing another skill of his. Skill, Divine Possession, has been activated. A mystical wind swirled around Suho. Skill, Meta Wind, has activated. Suho's silver hair shimmered as an explosive, beastly vigor burst from within him. This can't be. Is that the monarch of Fong's power? Unbeknownst to her, another fallen monarch was watching over her from his place of eternal rest. Who are you? I can sense your spirit, she cried. But upon recognizing a familiar energy, she realized that the being watching her was the spirit of the King of Beasts, who had fought against the Monarch of Shadows alongside her. Rakan is watching Quaratia's sanctuary. Rakan. Why in the world have you lent your powers to the Monarch of Shadow's son? Quaratia simply couldn't comprehend. Why would Rakan give the son of his killer his powers? Regardless of his reason, she couldn't deny that the essence of Rakan was woven into Suho's body. Even though he couldn't summon his shadow soldiers, Suho possessed the strength to face thousands of insects alone with the Iron Body technique. Come at me. Suho slammed his engorged fist into the oncoming tide of white insects, creating a tremendous explosion. The residual fragments scattered in all directions, but they soon regrouped and descended once more. Quaratia's thorny mantis. Quaratia's explosive worm. Quaratia's venomous spider. Quaratia's poison moth. Suho was attacked by numerous poisonous insects. However, empowered by Rakan's essence, he skillfully evaded them with dazzling agility. He then proceeded to land a series of powerful blows. With each explosive attack, hundreds of insects burst forth. Quaratia clenched her lips in frustration. You're putting up quite a fight. But in the end, you are all alone. My insects will eventually poison you. Harmful substances have been detected. Candiaru's blessing has started detoxification. 3, 2, 1. Detoxification is complete. But Suho remained unaffected and moved as if nothing was happening to him. How are you unharmed? Quaratia's eyes widened with great astonishment. Rakan also laughs boastfully, declaring that the insects have grown weak. You dirty animal! Quaratia screamed. The situation was going against her expectations. Her plan was to torture the Monarch of Shadow's son until she was satisfied. She hadn't foreseen any hurdles since her prey couldn't call upon any external forces within her world. Not even the formidable shadow army of the Monarch of Shadows could set foot in her resting place. This is my domain. What is going on? Nevertheless, there is still plenty of time. Eventually, you will tire and fall. Time. Suho glanced at the quest window. Remaining time, 3 hours, 41 minutes, 17 seconds. Croatia was right. 4 hours was a long time to defend, and continuing the battle at the current pace seemed impossible. I can't even draw my weapons here. Somehow, the inventory did not open here. Then what about the shop window? In the current location, the use of potions and the shop is unavailable, and even with level-ups, status recovery will not occur. A system message arrived that answered his question. Leveling up is still possible, huh? A faint smile crept onto Suho's lips. He wondered how many experience points he would gain from killing all her insects. A few insects wouldn't be worth his time, but killing the countless insects he was up against made it an appealing challenge. Shall I take this opportunity to level up a bit? Suho decided to continue the battle, recalling each of the skills currently available to him. Without a weapon, skills like Storm Slash and Dual Sword Mastery were useless, and he couldn't enlist the help of his shadow soldiers. The available skills were Pain Tolerance, Ruler's Authority, Meta Wind, Giant's Armor, and Iron Body Technique. However, they were skills that consumed mana in real time, so they could only last for a short time. In a prolonged battle, conserving health and mana was crucial, so a more strategic approach was needed. I'm glad I can use Divine Possession, but since I need to conserve mana, I should stop it for now. Deactivating Divine Possession would slow down Suho's speed, making it impossible to perfectly evade the attacks of the insects, but he was confident of managing the attacks with the Pain Tolerance skill. Skill, Divine Possession, has been deactivated. The moment Divine Possession skill was deactivated, Gray popped out of Suho's body. The pup looked around with a puzzled expression. Woof? Gray, startled by the insects swarming from all directions, hid behind Suho's legs. Gray level 7 Fang Wolf. Interesting. Suho thought. Gray's persistent hunting in the Shadow Dungeon had increased his level considerably. Since we're here, let's take this opportunity to level you up as well. But I see he's still a coward. Even Gray's former monarch, who was watching from afar, couldn't help but click his tongue at his descendant's cowardice. Rakan requests further training for his successor to become stronger. Do I get anything out of this? Suho asked, challenging Rakan with a daring gaze. Rakan offers a piece of advice in return. Advice? Rakan advises that the world you are in is ruled by the law of the jungle. He advises that you should become a predator rather than prey. A predator? Wait, do you mean? Suho's gaze shifted to the repulsive insects swarming around. Are you telling me to eat the insects? Rakan nods. As absurd as it was, he was the king of beasts. Suho knew there had to be some wisdom to his advice. After a momentary hesitation, he chuckled. At least they're white. It makes them somehow less repulsive. Wait. Surprisingly, Croatia looked concerned by Suho's response. Surely, you're not considering following that madman's advice, right? Observing her reaction, Suho became even more convinced. He grabbed Gray, hiding behind him with his tail tucked between his legs. Gray, it's about time for you to become an adult, don't you think? Woof? Suho lifted the wolf pup, his legs wobbling, and without any hesitation, he tossed Gray into the swarm of insects. As Gray held, moving further away, Suho smiled and said, "The world is ultimately the survival of the fittest." Gray. Become a predator, not prey. It was in the wolf pup's blood to become a true predator. The power of the king of beasts flowed through him, and Suho himself was now trying to get it out of him. He led by example and chomped down the venomous insects attached to his body. Their venom burst from their bodies like succulent fruit juice. Harmful substances have been detected. Blessing, effect of blissful longevity, has initiated detoxification. 3, 2, 1. Detoxification is complete. Suho chuckled. This tastes better than I thought. This fool is insane. Croatia was astounded. Suho suddenly remembered something she had said earlier. I am both a single entity and a collective existence. He wondered what would happen if he devoured all the insects of this world as he continued to swallow them without mercy. Stop it. Stop eating them. Croatia screamed in shock with every bite he took. A massive hand made of insects emerged from the void to strangle Suho, but he swiftly evaded it and bit into another group of insects. Calm down. There's still plenty of time. Remaining time, 3 hours, 7 minutes, 54 seconds. 3 hours should be enough time for a meal. Following Suho's lead, Gray was also diligently devouring the insects. Suho noticed that the wolf pup kept glancing at him. He wasn't sure why at first, but he soon realized that the pup was looking at him out of fear that he was going to snatch his food and devour it. Seeing Gray's determination, Suho felt even more energized. Great! Let's see who can eat more. No, don't compete with one another. Screaming, Croatia intensified her attacks. But no matter what she tried, there was no way to stop Suho and Gray. Rockin's advice had proven to be effective. They devoured wave after wave of insects. Title: Natural Enemy of Insects has been acquired. Title: Natural Enemy of Insects. This is a title given to the predator of insects. When facing insect-type monsters, all stats increased by 40%. The title sounded similar to Wolf Slayer, and the effects of the title were apparent. Title: Natural Enemy of Insects buff effect has been activated. The endlessly surging wave of insects before Suho trembled greatly. He realized that the insects now instinctively knew he was their natural enemy. This is a surprise. Do these creatures also feel fear? With a screech, the massive swarm of insects, once united, scattered to avoid Suho. Then suddenly, a mysterious powder sprinkled over Suho's head. It seemed like the powder was the ashes of the insects he had killed and devoured up until that point. The ashes of their souls. You have seized the role of shaman of the Queen of Insects and the Monarch of Plagues. Chapter 73. Shaman? Again? The situation was entirely different from Rockin's blessing, yet a similar outcome occurred. Suho figured that Rockin had been friendly toward him from the beginning thanks to Gray and appointed him as his shaman. But this time, what caught Suho's eye was the fact that he had seized the shaman title. Rockin bursts into laughter, observing Croatia's bewildered expression. Rockin, you bastard! Croatia was furious. You dare interfere with my ritual? You have some nerve for a dead animal. Suho initially thought that Rockin's advice was to help him get the title, Natural Enemy of Insects, but now it seemed that Rockin's true intention was for him to become the shaman of insects by taking it away from Croatia. Suho glanced at the countless insect remains scattered around him. They were parts of Croatia's soul. A ritual. At this rate, I'll be performing a funeral. Out in the real world, Arsha and Minsun were sacrificing numerous humans for Croatia's ritual. But ironically, Croatia's own insects were being used as ritual sacrifices instead. Does this make any sense? Rockin explains that Croatia's insects were originally resentful victims devoured by Croatia herself. Resentful? It dawned on Suho that he was essentially avenging the insects. Ah, so I'm the shaman for these insects. Not Croatia's shaman. Croatia was both a singular and a collective existence. By performing the ritual for the insects, Suho had inadvertently become Croatia's shaman in the process. You've won, the former monarch said, declaring her defeat. Even though the quest timer had not yet expired, Croatia looked beyond tired, as if she had aged centuries. What a brute. You're more insect-like than actual insects. You're undoubtedly Sun Jinwa's son. As the insects scattered away from Croatia, her colossal form gradually diminished in size to reveal the feminine figure that she had once used to battle Sun Jinwu in the past. She descended before Suho. Remaining time, 1 hour, 29 minutes, 34 seconds. Emergency quest, Croatia's poison has been completed. Level up. The quest was completed before the required time had passed. The determination spurred Coratia to activate the quest was now utterly broken. The Queen of Insects cast a venomous gaze at Suho, her eyes filled with resentment. "You basically made me die a second time." Suho interrupted Coratia and asked bluntly, "Are you behind the catastrophe happening back on Earth?" "How ridiculous." Coratia burst into laughter. "I'm a monarch who died long ago. The only thing I can do now is wander this world of nothingness. What on earth could I have orchestrated?" "So you're saying you don't Arsha and Lee Min-sung?" "Who?" Coratia said without a care in the world. "You don't know either of them?" Suho was confused. Rakan explains that without a shaman, a deceased monarch cannot have any impact on the real world. Rakan was right. There was nothing a dead monarch could do. The former monarch of Fangs had only awakened when Suho became involved in activities related to him, allowing him to observe the outside world through his dreams. The same applied to Coratia. This is so ridiculous, Suho thought. Arsha and Min-sung were sacrificing numerous lives to sustain Coratia's power, but she herself was oblivious to it all. "I think I understand the situation." Coratia chuckled. She fashioned a chair out of her insects and sat down, crossing her legs. "There are always insects that covet my power. Even after I became a monarch, I've had numerous conflicts with such aspirants." She had regained the regal demeanor of a proud queen. "I survived my trials to become the sole ruler. But this invited even more challengers than before. I become both prey and predator." The world of insects was a dog-eat-dog world. Any insect that consumes me can become a monarch. "So, those wreaking havoc out in the real world are planning a ritual to succeed you?" Suho asked. "It seems like they are trying to summon my resentful insects to devour them." Coratia's mouth curled upward, forming a mischievous yet weary smile. "Their goal isn't to serve me. They're nothing more than greedy monsters wanting to devour me. Just like what you were doing to me moments ago. You didn't taste good, though." "Why you?" The enraged Coratia clenched her fists on the arms of her chair, but she quickly regained her composure and leaned back. "In the end, if I have to be eaten by someone, it's only fitting that it was by the one who killed me. If your father were an insect, he would have inherited my power long ago. Even if you devour my insects here, you can never become the monarch of insects. You do not meet the requirements. So, in the end, I'll be your shaman? Not by choice. You are nothing but trouble. However, since you've seized the role from me, I'd appreciate it if you could find a worthy successor to inherit my power." "Why should I? What's so great about you?" "I'm beautiful by human standards, am I not?" Coratia said, showcasing her figure. "Enough with the jokes. What can a shaman of insects do? Just so you know, as the shaman of beasts, I can possess the monarch of Fang's successor within my body." Suho lifted Grey to show her. Coratia clicked her tongue in disapproval. "Rakan, you should be ashamed of yourself. This little puppy is your successor?" Rakan is about to. Casually dismissing Rakan's message, Suho glanced at Grey. Grey level 14 Fang Wolf. Thanks to the diligent hunting of insects, Grey's level had increased by twofold in just one day. Suho's level had also increased to 29. As his level increased, the experience points required for leveling up would progressively become higher. So, having leveled up in such a short time was a remarkable feat, but as time was frozen out in the real world while he was in this Coratia's resting place, it was as if he had suddenly become stronger in less than a second. The Queen of Insects looked down at Grey as if he were insignificant, but there was also a hint of envy in her eyes. Still, Rakan is somewhat fortunate. He found a successor among his kin. On the other hand, I lack a suitable successor, so something like divine possession is impossible for me. What? That means being a shaman of insects is worthless. Instead, there's something else that's possible. As soon as Coratia finished speaking, a message window unfolded before Suho. The quest completion reward has arrived. The following reward will be given. Reward 1. Health and status restoration. Reward 2. Buff, roar of the battlefield. A buff? Suho's eyes lit up with interest. This will be useful. Leaving the rewards for later, he then scanned his surroundings. Essel was standing on the corpse of the defeated demon. Red energy was flowing out from the corpse and being absorbed into her hand. Suho, Essel, with a stern expression, called out. This bloodstone was made with my blood. Your blood? Yes. It looks like the demons that hunted me in the demon realm are somewhere here. Young monarch. Baru looked just as serious. If this is true, we're in for a tough battle. The Ed vividly remembered the ferociousness of the Radairu clan during the Monarch's War. If the demons that had ended the Radairu were here, and if they had amplified their powers with noble blood, the confrontation was bound to get ugly. Suho nodded in agreement. There must be a factory somewhere here. Exactly. The demons have upgraded from stardust to bloodstones. They must be hiding somewhere nearby. The challenge now was finding the factory's location. He had killed all the demons in the area since they couldn't be extracted due to their contaminated mana. Maybe we should have kept one alive, Suho expressed his regret. We'll have to search this area thoroughly. Hey, Suho! I found something here. Dogyun shouted, no longer frantically dodging and fleeing. Chapter 74. Suho's powers as Quraishi's shaman immediately manifested. Working in sync with Kandiaru's blessing, not only was he immune to poison, but he could also handle toxins with ease and even incorporate them into his attacks. Since I can manipulate with great freedom, can I do things like this? Suho stretched his hand out toward Miho and Taijayu. Blessing, Poison Mastery, has activated. The poisonous mist scattered by the exploding bees began to dissolve upon contact with the light emitted by Suho. Is that a detoxification skill? Suho. Are you a healer, not a summoner? Miho asked, looking perplexed. Almost every ability Suho had demonstrated so far seemed to be unrelated to healing. Taijayu, on the contrary, was buoyed by the new development. You should have mentioned it earlier. Can you detoxify the poison inside of me? The healer from the Fiend Guild had failed to detoxify him, but Suho's skills seemed special. Poison that was not ingested by the player cannot be detoxified. However, the poison afflicting Taijayu wasn't Minsung's royal jelly but Arsha's. I should have taken a sip of that poison Arsha gave me. But there's no time for regrets. Detoxification will have to wait. First, let's deal with these insects, Suho said. As they prepared to attack, arrows began flying from all directions. The contaminated ghouls that had been hiding suddenly emerged to launch an attack on Suho and his companions. I'll take care of the ghouls. Miho leaped forward, slamming her fist into the ground. Violent quake. A circular wave of mana emanated from her fist as she struck the ground. The contaminated ghouls, as if possessed, all turned simultaneously and lunged at Miho. Following suit, Taijayu rushed forward, ready to fight by her side. However, he was struggling to cope with the fact that the beasts were once his hunters. They had followed his lead and looked up to him like younger siblings. Needing to kill every one of them was a heavy burden. Minsung. What do you want from all of this? Taijayu exploded in frustration, shouting angrily at his old friend who was hiding somewhere. All I want is for things to go back to how they were. To Taijayu's surprise, Minsung's voice echoed from all directions as if every bee swarming the beehive was speaking for him. Minsung. Where are you? Stop hiding like a coward and come out this instant. Taijayu said, scanning his surroundings. I was. The bee swirled together in an instant, forming the shape of a human. Never hiding. As Minsung descended, the entire area fell silent as if time had come to a halt. Minsung. I'll handle this. Taijayu gritted his teeth and lunged at Minsung, who was staring back at him without emotion. Miho urgently shouted, it's dangerous to fight him alone. But Taijayu didn't stop. Even without mana, he believed that he could overpower Minsung with sheer strength. This was the difference in rank that Minsung had envied so much. However, Arrogant fool. Minsung chuckled as he dispersed into numerous bees. Taijayu's fist cut through the empty air in vain. Minsung reformed into a human shape behind Taijayu. Taijayu swiftly turned and attacked Minsung again with his incredible reflexes, but the villain scattered into the wind once more. In a matter of seconds, numerous attacks were exchanged, but they all ended in the same way. Suddenly, Taijayu found himself surrounded by dozens of copies of Minsung. What's going on? Soon, sharp spears extended from their hands as they transformed into beasts that resembled Arsha's lancers. As the battle continued, more copies of Minsung transformed into lancers. Taijayu, bewildered, tried his best to avoid the relentless onslaught. Quite impressive. I'm surprised you can fight this well since you can't use your mana. A damaged S rank is still an S rank, huh? Minsung's copies taunted Taijayu. Young monarch. Baru gazed at Suho. Suho lifted his head and looked toward the sky. It's all an illusion. No, it's mimicry. Minsung was just a worker bee, so he lacked the ability to create lancers like Arsha could. If he could, the ghouls Miho was facing would have been lancers instead. The ghouls were his failed attempts to mimic the queen bee. The creatures Taijayu was facing were actually bees banded together to create the illusion of contaminated lancers. Baru, where's the real Li Minsung? I apologize, but the bees are aimlessly buzzing around, disrupting my senses. Baru had been tirelessly tapping his antennae to track down the villain's whereabouts. Let me help. Suho lifted his head, surveying the bees that filled his field of vision. I wonder what they taste like. Having recently feasted on Quaracious insects, the creatures before him seemed like a familiar delicacy. Title: Natural Enemy of Insects buff effect has been activated. The bees, buzzing around in confusion, trembled with fear. Pressure from a natural predator had awakened their instincts for survival. Title: Natural Enemy of Insects. It's a title given to the predator of insects. When facing insect-type monsters, all stats increase by 40%. Suho swiftly crossed his swords, and an immense aura emanated from Rakan's Fang in his right hand. Skill: Scorn of the Weak has activated. Effect: Fear has been activated. The target's stats are reduced by 50% for 1 minute. Rakan's Fang induced a state of terror in weaker opponents. When this effect was combined with Natural Enemy of Insects, an incredible synergy erupted. Suho's blades were also imbued with the essence of the wind. Skill: Storm Slash has activated. A whirlwind of tremendous force, palpable even to Suho himself, wrapped around him. He began to spin his entire body, wielding his swords like a giant windmill. A fiercely violent storm engulfed the bees, swallowing them all at once. Even the imitation lancers surrounding and pressuring Taijayu were engulfed in the storm. Contaminated Hornet has been defeated. 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 Countless bees were ripped apart as if they had passed through a grinder. An overwhelming flood of messages poured in endlessly. Alongside them, another system message also appeared. Skill: The level of Storm Slash has increased. How is this power possible? Hastily escaping the storm's influence, Taijayu turned around, astonished. Wasn't he a healer? Suho resembled neither a summoner nor a healer, which made Taijayu feel like his knowledge was shattering into pieces. Naturally, he was unaware of Suho's title buffs and debuff effects that increased his power. Wait, what happened to Minsung? Startled, Taijayu quickly turned to check where Minsung had been. His copies had scattered and vanished in the storm. As a momentary stillness took over after the storm, Baru shouted, I found him. Suho's sword leaped forward menacingly, slashing through the air. The empty space he attacked began to crumble into pieces as if something was beneath it. You found me quite easily. Ominous eyes peered through the gaps of the hidden space. Minsung slowly walked out, but his appearance was different from before. Queen Bee's Lancer. Not contaminated, I see, Suho thought. Unlike the contaminated lancers they had encountered so far, Minsung appeared as an uncontaminated lancer, a humanoid soldier, fully clad in armor. His aura was more formidable than any lancer he had faced so far, likely due to his A rank. For someone who wasn't hiding, you were well hidden. Suho teased. It's beneath a king to appear in my servant's playground, Minsung said mockingly. He's strong. Suho sensed he wasn't like the other beasts he had encountered so far. However, he was much weaker than the deceased monarchs he'd bested. Having already encountered Croatia, Suho's spirit remained unbroken in the face of Minsung's overwhelming presence. However, Miho and Taijayu's reactions were different. This is unbelievable. How did he become so powerful? Minsung was Arsha's ultimate soldier, one that she spent enormous effort and time on. An overpowering aura emanated from him, having been made for battle, instilling a profound sense of despair. Miho's instincts were sharper than anyone else, and she clearly felt Minsung's colossal presence. For Taijayu, it was a sense of humiliation. Ugh. If only I could use mana. No matter how strong Minsung had become, he believed that he could defeat him if he was at full strength. Let's combine our strength, Suho said, unfazed by the villain's aura. What? Taijayu was confused by the suggestion. Come again? So was Miho. Why are you looking at me like that? Then should we just run? Any shred of wanting to retreat to regroup was crushed by Suho's words. Our formation is a mess right now, so let's just overwhelm him all at once. Suho's strategy was straightforward. He's good at hiding, so let's start by tearing off his wings so he can't escape, and then let's all gang up on him until he's defeated. Minsung laughed at the simplicity. How pitiful. Do you think you can take me on? You are in the presence of the new monarch of plagues. The new monarch of plagues? Suho scoffed at him. She didn't taste that good though. Minsung suddenly felt uneasy before Suho. His dismissive attitude appeared sincere enough to make him shiver. Croatia observes Minsung's misguided choice to confront the formidable Suho, scoffing and shaking her head in amusement. What will your poison taste like? Suho smiled sinisterly. Chapter 75. Minsung had narrowly escaped Arsha, but ever since then, her contaminated lancers hunted him relentlessly. They were undoubtedly weaker than him, but it was utterly impossible to kill them. Every time he tried, a powerful message echoed loudly inside his mind, causing him to suffer from immense headaches. Pledge allegiance to the Queen. Arg. Shut up. At the time, Minsung was on the verge of breaking down. Even the slightest lapse in concentration would make him want to return to Arsha immediately and kneel before her, pledging his loyalty. Pledge allegiance to the Queen. Stop. I beg you, get out of my head. Minsung tried to get rid of the voice, but covering his ears and banging his head against the floor couldn't stop it. It soon dawned on him that it was never a voice. It was an instinct worker bees possessed for the queen bee. For Minsung, who was used to dominating others, it was a profoundly humiliating sensation. Pledge allegiance to the... I refuse. I am not a worker bee. Gritting his teeth, he forcibly suppressed his instincts. He finally found a place where he could hide from Arsha's lancers, his former office at the Fiend Guild headquarters. This is where I truly belong. Not some beehive. He opened his wine fridge to open a bottle when he realized the cause of his misfortune. It's all because of this. The premium wine that was always given to him at Queen Bee, the royal jelly, was Arsha's secret venom. Drinking this every day has made me like this. Minsung raised the wine bottle to throw it but hesitated for a moment. Seeing the venom of the queen bee, an idea suddenly crossed his mind, a way to suppress the instincts of a worker bee. I might be able to create my own legion. Minsung poured his mana into the bottle, imbuing the properties of Arsha's royal jelly with his own. Great! Once they're addicted to this poison, they'll become soldiers loyal to me, not the queen bee. Minsung absorbed the newly crafted royal jelly into his venomous stinger. He immediately left the building and ambushed lower-ranked hunters to inject them with his royal jelly. However, they dropped dead on the spot. Weak fools. They can't even withstand this level of poison. Minsung clicked his tongue and sought out stronger hunters. But the results were the same. They all vomited blood and succumbed to the poison. Why do they keep dying? He wondered if there was something wrong with his concoction. He decided to continue attacking the hunters until he could determine the cause. Finally, a successful case emerged. The target was a hunter from the Fiend Guild. Is this just a coincidence? Initially, he thought it was merely chance. However, after numerous experiments, he realized that only hunters from the Fiend Guild could withstand his venom without succumbing. Eventually, Minsung understood the reason. Was it because they were following me from the beginning? Originally, Arsha's royal jelly was a poison that created worker bees, and thus, their loyalty was hers alone. But I am not a queen. In the world of bees, he was just an ordinary worker bee, so there was no way the others would pledge allegiance to him. But it seemed that the members of the Fiend Guild could somehow be influenced, and he attributed his success to the fact that they were his subordinates before his transformation. In their minds, he was still their vice guild master. The reason for this loyalty arose from superficial ties between salary and position, but among hunters, hierarchy was everything. Understanding this principle, Minsung burst into a bitter laugh. So that means only Fiend Guild members can successfully consume my royal jelly? How amusing. As his legion grew, he noticed that his minions were markedly different from Arsha's lancers. They looked more like ghouls than armored knights. Minsung wondered if he could seize everything from Taijayu, the man he despised. To him, the position of guild master never suited someone like Taijayu from the start. Taijayu was better as my chauffeur. I will poison him and make him my slave. He wasn't sure if his poison could affect an S-rank hunter, but if successful, he knew he would become unstoppable. Since Taijayu had once obediently followed his orders as a chauffeur, he knew that there was a chance it could work. Minsung's mood improved at the thought of making Taijayu his slave. In truth, being reborn as a worker bee wasn't all bad. Aside from the instinct to pledge allegiance to the queen bee, there were actually many advantages. Arsha had compressed Minsung's human essence and transformed him into a highly evolved beast made for combat. While it was regrettable that his hunter skills had disappeared, his new superpowered body turned out to be more of an advantage. He even wondered if he could beat Taijayu with his improved build. He might be an S rank, but Taijayu is nothing more than an archer. If I were to poison him first and render him unable to wield his weapon, victory would be within reach. The culmination of all plans had led him to this moment. An exhausted Taijayu stood before him, ready for the taking. I can win at this rate. Minsung was confident. The thought of crushing Taijayu with his own hands and then spitting on his trampled face delighted him. To reset the imbalance created by the Great Cataclysm, he planned to turn him into his slave for the rest of his life. But who is the hunter next to him? Minsung looked at Suho and felt an ominous sensation. He has the aura of a queen bee. But he can't be. I'd be feeling a sense of allegiance if he was. Is this? It was pure fear. The fear of facing a natural enemy surged within him. Why do I feel this way? He doesn't even look that strong. His transformation significantly improved his senses, which enabled him to gauge an opponent's level with great accuracy. Suho's mana levels meant he was undoubtedly a C-rank hunter, a B-rank at best. The threatening presence belonged to the A-rank hunter, Miho standing beside him. But why does make me want to escape? It's like he's my natural predator. This unsettling feeling affected Minsung's pride. He's an annoying one. To shake off his unease, he decided to reveal his true power, and tremendous energy surged from him. On the other hand, Suho had the opposite mindset. He's clearly stronger than me, but I don't feel like I'm going to lose. He promptly opened the store window. Item, arrows, 100, has been purchased. Item, arrows, 100, has been purchased. Instantly, 2 sturdy quivers filled with arrows appeared in Suho's hands. Well, if you can't use mana arrows, use these instead. Having received arrows that had appeared out of thin air, Taijaya looked at Suho with astonishment. Where did these come from? I'm a summoner. Suho gave a quick excuse and shrugged his shoulders. They're not free, so I'll bill you later. But use them generously. I'll give you more once you run out. Thanks. I appreciate it. Taijaya nodded brightly. He decided to push aside his question for Suho for later, and he turned his head toward the enemies with a wicked smile. Fiend's Bow was an S-grade weapon capable of slaying magic beasts with ordinary arrows. Taijaya's arrows pierced through the heads and hearts of ghouls that swarmed from all directions. Leave the beasts to me. You two, focus on capturing Minsung. As much as he wanted to personally bring down the villain, he knew it would be impossible without mana. He didn't want to delay others by worrying about his desires. Let's go. Got it. Suho and Miho charged toward Minsung, and at that moment, the wings of the Shadow Lancers emerged behind them. They soared toward the villain at an incredible speed to unleash a relentless assault. However, Minsung mockingly evaded their attacks with ease. Too slow. How can he move so fast? Miho urgently warned Suho, be careful. His speed is much faster than an A-rank hunter. Minsung seemed pleased to hear her assessment, lifting the corners of his mouth. That's right. I've already transcended my human abilities. Your sluggish attacks can't even brush my body. Oh, really? Suho said. Minsung's demeanor quickly crumpled. No matter how hard he tried to ignore it, Suho's presence continued to aggravate him. This won't do. I'll kill you first. With fierce determination, Minsung surged toward Suho, his sharp spear aimed at his heart. I've been waiting for this moment. Suho's eyes flashed as he shouted, come out. Suddenly, rays of dark light shot out from Suho's body, simultaneously rushing toward Minsung. What is this? Minsung's eyes widened, bewilderment washing over him. The rays of dark light were only visible to the eyes of a worker bee, and the beams of darkness before him were, in fact, lancers. This doesn't make any sense. Minsung hastily changed direction just before attacking Suho. My speed is far superior to theirs. I can easily escape, even if they get close. But Suho firmly grasped the tip of Minsung's spear as it retracted away from him. Now I've got you, you scoundrel. Let go. Startled to the core, Minsung tried to repel Suho with all his might. But it was already too late. Kill him. Suho's Shadow Lancers began ruthlessly mutilating his body from every angle,